Thank you. I wanted to start by thanking everyone so much for giving up their Thursday night to come to an executive functioning talk. I know that that may not be for some people the most exciting thing, but I hope to really give you some actionable strategies that you can put into place right away. I especially want to thank the students for coming tonight. I'm sure nobody threw a fit in the car on the way over, and there's no rewards after this, but thank you so much for coming. I'm not sure if I would have handled it as well as a lot of the young people I saw walking in did. A little bit about me. I actually grew up in Boulder County. I went to Monarch High School, so I am a Boulder Valley School District kid. I was diagnosed from a young age with pretty severe ADHD. You'll notice this tonight, me not stopping, moving back and forth. I cite my ADHD as an unbelievable gift in my life now, but it landed me in the principal's office and in a lot of trouble all throughout K-12. I had significant academic struggles in middle school and high school, but I was fortunate enough to go to Ohio on a football scholarship for college. And then when I was in Ohio, I failed out very quickly because I couldn't navigate the athletic, academic, social demands. It was just too big and there was too much going on. I had some great mentors get me through the process and teach me how to be a student, develop a lot of the skills that I'm going to talk about tonight. After that, I came back to Boulder Valley School District, and I taught for 10 years at Louisville Middle School, and on special assignment, basically when there was a class that was losing their mind in the district, I would go in there and I'd kind of help them calm it back down and get things back in control. After that, last year, we started mentoring through movement, and we currently see 100 students with ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, and other executive functioning struggles. Awkward picture time. That's when I failed out of college very quickly. The doctors didn't know if it was because I had ADHD or the frosted tips, the chemicals from that, it just leaked into my brain. So what we're going to cover tonight is we're going to go over real briefly what executive functioning is. Again, my goal of this presentation is to give you guys as many actionable strategies as possible. We're going to go how these skills impact students. The great news about these skills that no one talks about is that they can be developed. It's not easy, but these skills can be developed. And finally, how to do school. When we break down how to do school for our students, we see huge academic gains. So I wanted to start with what executive functioning skills and ADHD is not. So these are very common misconceptions. The first misconception is that students that struggle with executive functioning skills are not intelligent. This couldn't be more false. Just because we sometimes do not do well in school, it has nothing to do with intelligence. Quite often our students are average to above average intelligence, and I can't tell you how many kids that I work with that are gifted athletically, musically, artistically. Our population really is drawn towards the arts and creative endeavors. We may not be gifted in sitting still for 8 hours a day, but we're very, very intelligent, typically. The next misconception is students who struggle with executive function are lazy, unmotivated, and can concentrate when they want to. Being a teacher in the teacher's lounge, I would hear this all the time. We're going to do a lot of question and answer at the end of this, and usually one of the first questions I get is how come my student can concentrate on video games, but they can't concentrate on schoolwork? We'll get into this later, but a lot of this has to do with lower dopamine levels than usual, and we do really poorly with things that are not immediately gratifying. When you play a video game or you have something that's immediately gratifying, we actually have the ability to hyper-focus. Versus reading a chapter in a textbook, I know that may help me a week from now, but if it doesn't give me immediate gratification, it's going to be a struggle for me. The final misconception is students with executive functioning challenges are not successful in life. If you ever have time, the first actionable step is to Google successful people with either ADD, ADHD, or dyslexia. Due to this immediate gratification, we are very drawn to careers as CEOs, entrepreneurs, things like ER doctors, very fast-paced fields. When you do that Google search, you'll see basically everyone that you look up to has got some piece of this somewhere. So just something to keep in mind as you're going through this process, because it can be a challenging process at times. The way I describe executive functioning to a lot of people is like making toast. When I was growing up, my mother would try to hurry myself and my two rambunctious brothers out the door and try to get us to school. And she would give us a task like making toast. She would say, I need you to make some peanut butter toast. She would come back about 3 minutes later, and there was bread crumpled up all over the place. There was, I think my brother had the knife in the toaster, and we were fighting on the floor about something. This seemingly easy task actually has a lot of small pieces to it when you break it down. We're going to come back to this a lot and talk about how when we break this down for our students with executive functioning challenges, something seemingly simple that can appear as difficult, we really help our students. This is a great graphic for what executive functioning actually assists in. It's a buzzword that's thrown around a lot, but here's what it assists in. So it assists in everything from organization to focusing to impulse control, and it's basically the CEO of your brain. Another great analogy is it's the air traffic controller. When all these airplanes are buzzing around and chaos is going everywhere, it's your executive functioning's job to land all of these planes very safely. A quick note on organization. So we commonly think of organization as how your students' folders or backpack or physical materials look. With our population, organization can be something like, we see it a lot in writing. So our students write beautiful stories that make no sense at all. We have to teach them how to discipline their thoughts and how to organize everything. It's very common in math as well. When we get to higher level math, like Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, our students often have the right answers, but they have equal signs all over the place, which makes it very challenging to follow, and they quite often get lost in their numbers. So when we talk about organization and strategies for that, think about it in a bunch of different contexts. So first of all, executive functioning challenges aren't specific to ADHD, but since that's my background and that's my expertise, I thought I would speak to ADHD very quickly. So ADHD was unbelievably poorly misnamed. It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but we can focus very well. A lot of people who are very successful with ADHD, they cite their ability to hyper-focus as a big-time strength that they have. So it's not that we can't focus, it's just we get really deep into what we are interested in. We have a very low tolerance for boredom, like what I said before. This is due to dopamine levels and other things going on in the brain. Everyone with ADHD has executive functioning deficits that we'll talk about later. The big takeaway that I want is that normally interesting activities, such as a math worksheet or almost anything in our day-to-day school, sitting still and being quiet, these are very monotonous and more boring for people with ADHD than the typically functioning student. So that's just some brief background on executive functioning and what it is. Like I said, the great news is that these skills can be developed. It's not easy. It's actually very challenging, but through modeling and teaching students these skills, we can improve executive functioning significantly. This is a picture. I have a lot of people who work at our office with us tonight, but this is a picture of our chalkboard in our gym. So it says discipline equals freedom. This is a Navy SEAL mantra. And it couldn't be more true to our population. I don't mean discipline, like you're going to get yelled at, because we're all pretty good at that. What I mean is discipline, in that if you are disciplined to do what you need to do, and if you are disciplined to follow your routines, you will have an unbelievable amount of freedom in your life. If you are disciplined with ADHD, dyslexia, that is when this becomes a gift. That is when we start to see our creativity work for us. That's when we start to see our extreme amounts of energy work for us, and we're not just bouncing off the wall nervously. We quote Navy SEALs a lot, but this saying could not be more true. We'll talk about this a lot as well. If you take one thing from this presentation tonight, and only one, that is, please take the time, either on Sunday or Monday night, to help your student plan out their week. This is the #1 indicator of success we see with students when they get older: their ability to plan, calendar, and break down large assignments. Every single person who's here right now is only here because they saw this somewhere, they put it on some kind of calendar, they actually looked at that calendar, and then they followed through with it. This is a skill. Many of our kids get this intuitively, but with a student with executive functioning challenges, sometimes it does not come naturally. So, first of all, when you plan out your week, make it predictable. Make it on the same night of the week, and depending on what school your student goes to, whether they have teacher websites, online grade portals, or whatever modality the teacher uses to communicate, put it on a list. Make sure that list is visible as well so you can continue looking back to it throughout the week. Please put in meetings, practices, rehearsals, anything else on this list. We're really trying to develop this muscle. You can see one of our lists that we have when we work with our students on the left over there. And what you'll notice about it is it's broken down into very small and manageable chunks. So for example, if there's a big research paper due on Friday, our population is the population that flips the kitchen table out of anger on Thursday night because it's too big and we're too overwhelmed. Notice on the plan on the left, it says what to do Monday night. Maybe we find 2 resources for this research project. What to do Tuesday night. Maybe we create an outline and start on our rough draft. Wednesday night, finish our final draft and have someone revise it. Also notice how we're always working ahead. We're working ahead because with ADHD, I know that my attention is going to wander sometime during the week. I have to build in time for that, or I'll be pressing up against a deadline. So we're always working ahead. Make sure to check this plan every night with your student. And let me go back. Check your plan every night with the student and just focus on the process. We're much more concerned about the process than the grade we get on the research paper. And finally, this is great to put on your fridge, or if your student's older, I know the work we do with kids, we do electronic to-do lists. So there's a bunch of to-do list apps where you can link up to-do lists, and whenever they check something off, we get a text message. There's a bunch of ways to do it, but this is an unbelievably important skill that we want to develop in their students before they're independent. I love this Einstein quote: the best way to predict your future is to create it. What we're trying to do with our kids is teach them how to backwards plan and reverse engineer success in their week. The next strategy is routines. If you have an executive functioning challenge, if you are going to be successful with it, you have got to become unbelievably routine-oriented. This goes back to the discipline equals freedom concept as well. It sounds like routines are going to make your life very boring, but they're actually going to have the reverse effect. If you are disciplined enough to pack your backpack before school, you're going to have the freedom of not getting in a fight the next morning with your parents. And we see it over and over. If you're disciplined to hit your Monday and Tuesday to-do list, the end of the week, you're going to have a lot more free time than you thought was possible. The goal is to open up as much free time and time to do stuff that we love as possible. Routines will also significantly reduce stress and anxiety. We see that with a ton of our kids with anxiety and depression, is when we can get them into a routine, they know it's coming, they feel a lot better. It increases focus and organization. We're going to talk about that in academic hour as well. Students start to become more efficient because they're conditioning themselves to be successful in their routine. They build confidence and discipline, which is what we're going after when they're independent. So like I said, in my own life, to be a functional human being, I have to have a ton of routines in my life. One of those routines is I have to exercise very intense daily just to keep my attention up. I choose to go at this unmedicated. I'm sure I'll have a question about that later. But I choose to go at this unmedicated, and in order to do so, I have to have a tremendous amount of routines. Here's what my nighttime routine looks like to set myself up for success in the morning. Every night, my workout clothes are ready right next to my bed. I have a smoothie, my car keys, and my wallet are in the same spot. My car keys were not put in the same spot last night. I would not be standing in front of you today. I would still be looking for them somewhere. Same thing with my wallet. And finally, my backpack with our dog who always sleeps next to it is right by the door. If I wanted to, I could get up and out of the house within 3 minutes. This accounts for me for whatever chaos is going to happen in my morning. We have a 1-year-old. 2 days ago, she threw up everywhere, and I was still able to get out of the house on time. Everything is set up so I cannot fail my mornings. When I was a student, my backpack was not packed. My math homework was left at home, so I had to stay in for recess to finish that math homework. I had no discipline, which means I had no freedom. The one that I'm not showing up here, that my wife made me leave off, is I put my toothpaste on my toothbrush before I go to bed. Grosses her out tremendously, but I legitimately am serious about setting myself up not to fail in the morning. Everything is set up, so I'm good to go. So this is how you establish routines in your household and with your family. I strongly suggest whatever a sticky point in your family, meaning if you fight before bed every night about getting your child to bed, start to create a routine around that. If you can't get out the door in the morning, start to create a routine around that. If homework is a fight every single night, start to create a routine around that. That's not the easiest one, but anything you can, if you can start to create routines, you'll lock down the anxiety, and we start to condition ourselves to be successful. So this is where every student in the room begins to hate me. This is academic hour. I know the kids that I've worked with up here, they still roll their eyes at this. Academic hour. First of all, it does not have to be an hour. It could be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Academic hour is in a perfect world. In a perfect world, every single night at the same time, in the same location, you work on academics. So let's say it's 6:15 to 6:45 at the family kitchen table, we're doing academics. This is when our homework is done. This is when, because our kids, of course, are smart enough to say, I don't have any homework. So this is when we review our notes. This is when we organize. This is when we read. But we pick a time every single night to do academics. The first night you try to institute this, your kids are going to try to call child services. It's going to be insanely challenging. They're going to hoop and holler and throw a fit. Same thing's going to happen on the second night. Same thing's going to happen on the third. But eventually, when they start to ease into routine, we start to see the homework fights go away. By the way, this is what great students do. This is what they get intuitively. Is that every night, they block out a small amount of time to do what they need to do. This is the biggest indicator for success, well, the second biggest after planning a week, for success for our college students. College students we work with, when they go to the library from 12 to 1 every single day, doesn't matter what the day is, they find a way to make it through college. Here's an example of an academic routine or a way to start your academic hour. This is set up for if your student is in middle school or high school in Boulder Valley School District. Every night to start your academic routine, we check Infinite Campus or our grade portal. We don't get obsessed with grades, but we just want to know where we stand. Then we check teacher websites, Schoology, or Google Classroom. We always want to know what's going on in each class. By the way, these should be bookmarked across the top of your computer. So if I had to type in bvsd.org, and then I had to click on middle school, and then I had to click on Platt, and then I had to click on language arts, there is no way I'm getting there. My ADHD has taken over, and I'm on YouTube. There's no way I'm getting there. So these are bookmarked ahead of time. Again, we're always looking for ways to set ourselves up for success. Last thing we do is we organize all of our materials. Once your student gets into a routine, this will not happen on the first night, but once they get into a routine, this is a 5-minute exercise. If it is done, you will never need to see someone like me or another executive functioning coach. You always know where you stand, you know what's going on in your classes, and you know where everything is. So that would just be an example of something that we've seen huge growth of very small routines that our students can put into their lives. The next strategy is movement. Movement is the miracle drug for executive functioning challenges. People who get 15 minutes or more of intense exercise a day, there's a ton of studies out. We see that attention improves more than it does on Adderall. We see depression go down more than it does on Zoloft. Kids who get more than 15 minutes of intense movement a day, we see their academic functioning and what we call stickiness in learning, we see that dramatically improve. This is just a picture of our office. Every time our students start to zone out in the class, we do 15 minutes of intense movement. This is not always possible in the house. I know not every house, people don't allow their children to run around the house or balls to be flying off the wall or anything like that. So I thought I'd show you some just real quick things you can do for study sessions just to reset your attention and get things moving. So I'm gonna steal Carter. He's actually a former Hillside student who runs our gym now. So here's just a real quick one. And by the way, these do not need to get too complicated. I actually stole this one. We worked with the University of Denver hockey team. We've done some work with them, and this is something that they do to reset their attention. There's a lot of correlation between balance. Yeah, sorry we can't do it on the stage. But there's a lot of correlation between balance and academic functioning. So what you'll see is he's basically just activating both sides of his brain by cross-lateral movement. And it's a way to get his movement in without running around the house and losing his mind. Another thing we do that is a very common thing with athletes is we do a lot of reflex type stuff in between study sessions. Again, this activates the attention and activates the brain. So he'll just have his hand above mine, and I'll do it, and we'll see if we can get it. Nice.
Finally.
Good. So there's that. I won't put him on the spot anymore. But don't overthink it. Yeah, good job, Carter. Don't overthink it at all. Just find a way to get your kid moving in some capacity. If they were not able to move that day, simple balance or reflex drills will help reset their brain and reset their attention. Pause that for now. So if you take two things away from this presentation, first is the plan. The second one is self-assessment when you learn differently than others is a superpower. I want to repeat that. Self-assessment is a superpower. If you are here, it is very likely that your student or someone you know learns different than the typical sit and get type student. We have to figure out what that is. I don't have answers for everyone because everyone is different, but start to try to figure out what that is. It's very common that when a kid comes home and does well on a math test, let's say they get an A or a B on a math test, the conversation is generally, I am so proud of you, you got a B or an A on this math test. The conversation should be, you got a B on this math test. What did you do? How did you study? Did you study right after karate? Did you write it out so you could see it visually? Did you walk around the kitchen table and while I was doing the words with you, did you attend teacher study sessions? If you can start to figure out how your brain works, you will be off to the races, and it's a gift. For me to sit down and try to read a book would be the biggest waste of my time ever. I tried for many years. My attention is too poor to sit down and read. I would not get information from that. But for me to take that book, put it on audio, and go for a hike on Chautauqua, I found in grad school that I was nearly at 100% comprehension. I would love for families in here to start to speed up that process and try to figure out what works for your student earlier. This is a young lady we work with. She went to Peak and they had a challenge where they were just trying to learn how many places of pie they could get to. She's in 3rd grade, and in school she got to like one space, you know, typical. I'm sure everyone here has heard the story. Kid has a learning disability, has a hard time learning. But when we got her moving, here's what we did in 15 minutes with her.
I want you to stay around. I want you to stay there. Okay? Ready? Set. Go.
Here's my 1, 4, 5, 9, 2, 6, 5, 3, 5, 8, 9, 7, 9, 3, 3, 8, 4, 6, 2, 6, 4, 3, 3, 8, 3, 27.
Yeah.
So she got to 25 spaces in school. This child should never be allowed to sit down in the classroom. That's her self-assessment. When working with your student, start to dig in to what that is. We're all different. Some of us are visual, some of us are kinesthetic, and we often just blindly float through school trying to do what everyone else does. Really recommend you start the self-assessment process. My clicker's gone. There we go. The last piece to this is learning how to do school. Going through school, what came intuitive to other students did not come intuitive to me. Meaning, attending teacher study sessions. Anything else where it seems like common sense to most students, we needed to be explicitly taught. A great example of this is if anybody's a sports fan, I'm a huge basketball fan. John Wooden was a UCLA basketball coach in the 50s and 60s. He's known as one of the most successful coaches that's ever lived. The top athletes would all come to his school. People like Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was known then as Lou Alcindor. He would get all the top athletes in the country to come to his school. He would spend the first 5 minutes of every the first 5 minutes of the first day every season teaching these top athletes how to put on their socks and put on their shoes. He broke it down so minutely that he didn't want to waste time later for them being out for a week or two because they sprained an ankle or because they had blisters. He broke it down. He was disciplined enough to break it down so later they would have the freedom of being healthy the whole season. This is what we want to do for our kids. This is really seen with the advocacy piece. So commonly we tell our students to go talk to their teachers. I'm sure everyone said that to their kid here at some time. You need extra time, it's on your 504 plan, talk to your teacher. You didn't turn in an assignment, go talk to your teacher. This either doesn't get done, which is the most common response, It either does not get done, or it's done in a way that just makes the situation worse. What we recommend with our kids is actually giving them a script. Breaking it down, this goes back to making toast. Taking this big thing like going and talking to your teacher and breaking it down into small details will lead to it getting done correctly. So an example would be, let's say you're in science class and you run out of time in class and you did not finish your lab. Instead of getting a 0 on that lab, what do? Giving our kid a script, something along the lines of, Mrs. Baker, I worked really hard on this lab. I wasn't able to finish it. Would you like me to turn it in now for full credit, or can I turn it in tomorrow morning? I cannot tell you, as someone who hangs out with teachers 24/7, my wife being included, how much teachers appreciate that. So teaching your student how to play the game of school. So to win any game, you must understand the rules. There's a lot of unwritten rules in school that we do not teach our kids. Again, this comes intuitively to quote unquote good students and not to a lot of kids with executive functioning challenges. Students in the room, above all else, your teacher must understand that you care about the class and that you care about your learning, even if it's not true. I've spent way too much time in teachers' lounges and other places. Teachers will bend over backwards, even if you struggle academically, if they understand that you care about their class. So we're playing the game of school rules. First one is always make eye contact. I know in a class I'm going to zone out. In a 50-minute class, there's a good chance I'll be zoned out 30 to 35 minutes of that class. Once I learned that I should zone out looking at the teacher, I started getting compliments along the lines of, I'm really grateful that you're zoning out. I'm really grateful that you're engaged in my class. Versus before, when I was growing up, I'd have my head down and I'd have my hood up. My favorite move in graduate school was when I was zoned out. Every 15 minutes, I would do this one right here. Didn't hear a word they said. They thought I was engaged. They were super appreciative. I don't recommend zoning out for a lot of class. But if you struggle with ADD, zone out appropriately. They have got to know that you care. The second piece is ask for help. It is so rare as a teacher that we get students who genuinely want our help. It's very much appreciated. Again, if you're able to do it, if you're disciplined enough to do it, you get a lot of freedoms of performing highly in that class, even if you struggle academically. And the ultimate playing the game of school is attending teacher study sessions. If anybody here has kids in college, they should be at every office hours. It is so rare to do. And especially when you struggle with organization and other things, it affords you a lot of things. Again, if you are disciplined enough to give up an hour of your own time, and if you're at Fairview going to CAT time, if you give up an hour of your own time and you study with the person who's giving the test, or you get feedback from the person who's grading your paper, you will spend half the time doing your work, more time doing what you love, and you will score higher on that assignment. So parents, whenever we can teach our kids to play the game, and I know it's not a game for some people, but understanding the rules to school, it pays off. I always get the question, when you have ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, something along those, how do we study? A lot of this comes back to the self-assessment piece. But the way we study, and this is what's best practice for everyone, is short, frequent study sessions. Meaning, if there's a vocabulary test on Thursday, we start on Sunday night, 15 minutes Sunday night, 15 minutes Monday night, and we do short, frequent study sessions. This is how we get material from short-term to long-term memory. If you don't have ADD, you may have the ability to cram. We do not, so it shouldn't even be tried. But this is the best way for us to study. Also teaching active studying. If you give your brain a reason to remember something, it probably will. Most of our students, when they come in, let's say this was one of their vocabulary words, and they would sit there and blindly just repeat, malevolent, evil, malevolent, evil. What they should be doing is giving themselves a reason to remember it. So for example, if you look at the first three words, or excuse me, the first three letters, mal, that prefix means bad in Spanish. There's a great way to remember. If you look at the end of the word, the suffix, it looks like violent. You could associate violence with evil. If you look at the middle of the word, it has love backwards. Any of these things that you can do. Let's say something's going on, and for whatever reason you think men are evil, first four letters are male. So whatever you can do to remember, if you give your brain a reason to remember it, it probably will. Again, this will speed up your studying process. And finally, as we talked about, learn using your strengths. In this picture, we have one of our mentors. You can see language arts vocabulary cards all around him. This kid is a superstar at learning his Spanish while he's throwing the football. Picks it up really quickly. It took us a while to learn that. Once we figured it out, that's how we're going to get this child through law school. Here's an example of a sample study session. The organization piece we talked about earlier. We check if you're in middle school or high school, we check our grades, we check our teacher websites, we organize. 30 minutes of active studying, then take a good 15-minute break, get as much movement or dinner in as possible, and just rinse and repeat. So the final playing the game of school thing, and again, the purpose of playing the game of school is just to break down these things that we think our students understand, but they may not. For the life of me, I don't understand this example, but we do it all the time. So this is called the power of zero. We have students in our program that score nearly perfectly on their SATs and ACTs and do not understand what a zero does to their grade. They do not understand why I get so frustrated with them, and I hoop and I holler at them like crazy when I see a missing assignment. So once we figured out how to break this down, so for example, let's say these are your grades in the class. You have 100%, 90%, 84%, and 79%. Your grade is an 88% in the class. You're pushing an A. The conversation with these students is always, all my kids call me Slade. They're like, Slade, chill, I got it. I do not need to do my routine because I basically got an A in this class. The next night, we have a missing assignment. We throw 1 0 in there. They went from bordering an A to bordering a D. Again, don't know why they don't understand. This is a conversation we have all the time. Take these things that are frequent conflicts around the house or frequent misunderstandings and try to break them down as best as we can. Okay? I want to get to question and answer, just because most people say that's the most beneficial piece. But I would love for, if you have a pen and paper, just to take the time to write down 1 to 3 actionable steps. The goal of this was to be as actionable as possible. I did not talk about dopamine or neurotransmitters or anything like that. So. By the way, during question and answer, it's a little hard to read, but this is a phenomenal graphic. So it's what we see. It's the ADHD iceberg. So I think most people understand the iceberg metaphor. So what we see above the surface, we see the hyperactivity, we see the impulsivity, and we see the inattention. But when you look beneath at what's really going on, quite often we know to change our efforts. So we have a huge population that has sleep disturbances or lower than normal maturity. So just so you know, while we're doing question and answer, this is a great graphic to take some time with. All right, if anybody has any questions. They actually have the microphone, someone has it.
How do you get buy-in?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
How do you get buy-in for a routine? Like, my son just doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
You just want to no.
Yeah, I always get that.
Put your homework folder in your backpack.
Yeah, I could have anticipated that was probably the first question, is that first of all, we all fight what we need most. So if we know we need a routine, of course we're going to fight that like crazy. Like I said, I have a 1-year-old. And a year ago, I would have given you parenting advice, and now I realize how hard that parenting is, and so I don't do that anymore. But whatever works in your household for rewards and consequences, that's usually the answer. Just ways where it's like, I find myself after working with kids, like I'm disgustingly positive. I have to go home and shower off the positivity because I feel gross. But something along the lines of like, I'm so proud of you. You put your homework folder in your backpack in 1 day. That's amazing. Just finding a way to give them that reward, that dopamine hit of, yes, this was good. Most of our kids respond really well to positive. They get a lot of negative in their life. I'm not saying we should never give them negative, because we should, but they get a ton of negative in their life, so they respond way better to positivity.
How do you use distractions? My kids have to do homework in the computer, and they open several and they cannot control going to these different windows and talking to friends at the same time.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Sometimes my son says that, it helps me with my homework if I talk to my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to convince him not to do that.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we deal with distractions, especially online? First of all, your son is wrong. It doesn't work like that. But at the same time, so again, we drill the discipline equals freedom mentality into them, that if you're disciplined enough, this homework's going to get done a lot quicker. The second piece is how old is your son? 16? That's a tough age for this. It's hard because he's almost grown. But I guess the biggest thing would be if he will let you hold him accountable, and you can tell him, like, I just want you to have as much free time as possible. My ultimate goal is to open up more free time for you. Could you do your homework at the kitchen table? Maybe while I can see, if he's open to that. 16-year-olds are a little tough. Again, it's always out of love, and I'm not sure if he's looking for a secondary education, but if he is, we frame a lot of stuff through that. You're going to have to be able to focus.
Two tips. One, I take his phone, I have a 15-year-old. He can't stop Snapchatting, taking pictures of himself by strangers. So I take his phone for an hour. It is a battle. He's accepted it now. The other thing that I just learned this morning, that you can link Schoology to the Google Calendar. So it automatically downloads all of their tasks for a grade that they're using Schoology. You can download it to a Google Calendar that can be on their phone and be shared with you. So just to maybe help some other people.
Awesome. If you want to get really sophisticated with it, there's a lot of anti-distraction apps that are Google Chrome add-ons, where you can say, you can just type in there what websites they're not allowed to visit during what hours. Again, with a 16-year-old, you're going to want to be careful with that, especially if he's going to be on his own soon. But there's a lot you can do out there. But the ultimate goal is to start getting these skills within him. There's also a lot of research out there. There's something that came out of California, Irvine last year that said, if I'm in workflow and I'm working at 100% and my phone goes off, for me to get back to that workflow, it takes about 28 minutes for every time I check my phone to get back to full attention. Yeah.
My daughter is 9, and our biggest problem is the morning. So I have like the routine charts and everything. She's ADHD, dyslexic, gifted, with processing. But I can't get her to move.
Did you mean like get out of bed and move, or do you mean?
We can get out of bed now, so we have a Google Mini, and so I can like give lots of get out of bed. And I'll play music, and she has to get out of bed, but then she'll like get distracted, like, oh, that well dog was over there. And then I was only gonna play with it for 5 minutes. And then 20 minutes goes by, and then she discovered that she could decorate the bathroom sink with all these cups that were up. And
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
and like gave me dress drawers, and how do you get out of that?
First of all, that's exhausting. Second of all, you're doing everything right. So all the research says to not only say it out loud, but to post it. Just for people who don't know that. You want to give it to kids in multiple modalities. So since you're doing everything right, I mean, again, it's just building in some kind of reward, some kind of system in place where you teach them time. We don't understand time. And it's weird because when you get older, you get really protective over your time. If someone has a teenager here with ADHD, they know this very well. They are unbelievably protective over their time. But when they're young, they don't understand time. So some way to teach them time, put a timer on her. When this goes off, I expect X to happen. It's unbelievably exhausting, but hopefully she can start understanding that. Is that kind of helpful?
Timers make her anxiety go. Like, you grow up and she'll like fall on the floor and start throwing it.
You got a tough one, yeah.
She's my first one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm an occupational therapist, so I hear this question a lot, and I don't know if it will help you. But I find that for a lot of kids, going and remembering to look at a written list is really challenging, even though it works for a lot of kids and teens. So what I find sometimes taking pictures, like instead of this verbal memory, and then entire job of the environment of them doing it, or have a video model of her doing it really quick, but she was like your phone or something for a minute, or teaching a like little ditty or song or rhyme, and even if it has like a speech to emotion part of it, so that they have this like, okay, like fabric, something they like in the next spot, like something more or their favorite set there. So there's like this multi-sensory approach to reaching that list, if that makes sense. To be more visual, to be out, to be then the auditory listening and the hearing. There's
That's great advice, and I've heard great things about songs as well. So instead of using like a timer that's like buzzing and like going off, it's just like trying to accomplish a task in a certain song, or just something a little bit softer. You're welcome.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much. I'm a mom of 3 boys, and just seeing you up there and hearing you talk about your life movement was very positive.
Oh, thank you so much. There's 3 boys in our family, and all three are ADHD as well. So.
Yeah, that is into my question. Not only are my 3 boys all on some level of ADHD, 2E, sensory, whatever, my husband and I are too. So we have this family system of 5 of us, and we all, my husband and I kind of accommodated differently and with each other and that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that situation, and then I have a couple other questions.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, the apple usually doesn't fall far. I'm sure you know that very well. My wife is actually diagnosed ADHD as well, and our child care provider said we had the most hyperactive 1-year-old that she's ever seen. So we know what's coming down the pipe. So we have to be really overt at home. Meaning we have to be very, very clear about who has what task, who's picking up the child. I can't project my phone, but I wish I could show you my phone and how everything we have to do has to be in a joint calendar with reminders. So for example, on May 27th every single year, I get a text message that says anniversary in 1 week. If I didn't have that, I'd be single. So that's what real life ADD looks like. It's building in all these reminders, buzzing me right away when I have to pay my bills. It's a lot to get set up front, but then it doesn't. But then, it's once you have your systems built, it's not that bad. There's a great quote, and it's really, really applicable to us and our crowd. It's that people don't rise to their goals, they fall to the level of their systems. We really have to focus on our systems to get through our day-to-day. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think, from a parenting standpoint, I'm working in a different place than you are, because we've got older kids.
Yeah.
My oldest is 11, my youngest is 6. And so, when I was thinking of, okay, we're going to have a family meeting, and we're going to talk about what's important and when we're going to do it and all of that. I mean, I can picture all 5 of us sitting at the table and some hilarious stories for 2 hours.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking how to take your tips for the strategies and thinking of the family system having trouble doing those.
Well, since I don't know your children, it's kind of a challenging question. 5 ADD people in one spot sounds like a recipe for unproductivity. So I may try to divide and conquer on that one, just spending 10 minutes with each child. And maybe Sunday night is planning night. 10 minutes of planning, and then you're gone. 10 minutes of planning, you're gone type stuff. And then really being overt about setting up your week and planning it. Yeah, 5 kids sounds rough. Or excuse me, 5 ADD people sounds really, really tough. Go ahead.
And I want to say that some of the best parenting advice somebody gave me when I was pregnant with my first was, they say on the airplane, when oxygen mask drops, first take care of yourself, and then with that, and organize yourself a little bit. So organize everything in your life just a little bit. And then,
That's phenomenal advice. That's phenomenal. I love that. Yeah, whatever strategies we were talking about, you two first, they can come later.
Yeah, I like that.
They'll be fine.
is there anything I can talk more questions? Go for it.
All right. So then I have a couple specific things. When it comes to movement, you should see my house. We have trampolines in the living room, we have swings in multiple places.
Awesome. Awesome.
My husband and I are moving around too. 15 minutes doesn't seem like much. So you're talking about ongoing, 15 minutes every time you need it, and then do you need that really issue consecutive 15 minutes before you're really engaged and focused?
Yeah, so where the 15 minutes comes from, there's an awesome book for you to read called Spark. It's by John Rady. Thank you, Spark, John Rady. In this book, they talked about this. This was in the early 2000s in Illinois. What they did is they made kids work out before school. And they saw this school just skyrocket in all their academic functioning. That's where the 15 minutes comes from, because that is what's research-based is 15 minutes. Now, you knowing yourself is way better than any research I can give you. I can tell you 15 minutes for me and I'd be crawling out of my skin. To get up here and be a functioning human being in front of you guys, I know I needed about an hour and a half of intense workout today. And that's just what I have to do to get through my day-to-day. So yes, I feel you on that. Don't let the 15 minutes throw you off.
Okay. And then, so I'm also a therapist, believe it or not. And there's a psychiatrist who writes about something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it comes kind of along with ADHD, and it's the idea of feeling like you're under a magnifying glass, whether it's in social situations or in that kind of school performance kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that. I'm feeling like sometimes that's the kind of thing that might create my friends will not move in the morning, but it's more like an anxiety dream, or it's something different, I just wonder if you can speak to that.
I'll try my best. That's a tough one because, again, if you look at this graphic quite often, the hardest part of our job is parceling things out. So if a kid's being a pain in the tail, if you have a 16-year-old who's being a pain in the tail, every 16-year-old in the country is a pain in the tail. It's not necessarily ADD, ADHD, anything like that. So it's really hard to parcel out what's maturity, what's anxiety, what's ADD, I've failed at this so many times that I'm probably going to fail again, which is causing me anxiety. I don't know if I have any great recommendations. What I always tell families, if you keep installing these really good values and you just keep working through it, things when they get older tend to work themselves out. So it sounds like you know what you're doing with anxiety, and I'd probably attack that piece before I attacked anything else, just to making sure your child's happy and healthy.
Okay, and one more thing, just a comment, which is, one thing that does work for my 7-year-old in the morning when he's like, I don't know, with his dummy on the couch just lying there, is body doubling, and his just like literally doing every step with him. And that, like, I've made 1,000 shirts and videos and whatever, and games and songs in my life, but that does the trick. So I just wanted to share.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Hi, so I'm also a very ADD parent who was diagnosed about 4 years ago. So
Congrats. Yeah.
and I have 3 little preschool children, so I'm way ahead of the schedule on that. What I struggle is as a parent is definitely routine in the morning, and I feel like in a way that I'm creating a lot of anxiety for my children because I have a struggle getting out the door every morning. So just like your personal story, what motivates you to keep doing the same routine every single day? Because I can
Yeah.
get routine for about 1 week and then burn out.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is not to beat yourself up if you fall out of your routine. So if you fall out of your routine, it's not like you're not beating yourself up. You're not like, I can't do this. It's just like, okay, I got it tonight. So that's the first step. The second thing is much more depressing. It doesn't get easier. You know, I read stuff all the time like, 21 days to get into a habit. That's not a thing. Like every night before I go to bed, I'm like, do I really got to lay out my clothes? Every morning I wake up, do I really got to work out? This is horrible. But I mean, I wish I had really good advice on that. It's just, you know, it's just finding a way where you just do it enough, where you just fall into place knowing that it's really going to de-stress a lot of things later.
Did you have like a time period where it finally felt rewarding to you?
It's a great question. I'm 34 right now. I was a disaster until I was like 26, 27. So I don't like to give like life advice because this is all like new. But I don't know. And I don't know if rewarding is the right word. I mean, it gets to your point. So what we teach our kids, and we work with older kids, we work with middle school, high school, and college kids. What we teach our kids is motivation is not what you want. You don't want motivation. You want discipline. I'm not motivated to get up and brush my teeth. I don't need to listen to Eminem, Lose Yourself, full blast, so I can brush my teeth every morning. It just becomes a piece of me. I would start to associate whatever it is that will help make you successful in the morning. If you can treat that like brushing your teeth and not beat yourself up when you fall off, because you will fall off, that's the best advice I could give on that. You're welcome.
Question about computer screen time. I have 2 boys, they do anything I want them to do.
That's awesome as a parent, yes.
But when they come off that computer, they are different kids. And I'm wondering if there any research or things that computer screen time is bad for them.
Any diagnosis, anything, any ADD, any?
They both have serious executive function.
Okay.
And we're currently getting one of them looked at for on the scale. Yeah.
Oh no, it's okay. It's
We're
okay.
getting children's hospital.
Yeah.
Autism, sorry.
Okay.
So we don't have any of this stuff, but definitely their function is off. They're both adopted and have serious development.
Okay.
So anyway, like I said,
Yeah, I have heard of that. I've heard that frequently. A lot of this goes back to these dopamine levels we were talking about before, about the immediate gratification. One of the scary things about our students is that we do have a much higher addiction rate. So for whatever reason, and I'm sure someone here could help me on this, but for whatever reason, we have a much higher likelihood of being addicted to drugs, alcohol, video games, something like that. So the fact that you notice that, I'd be really careful with it. And it's hard when that's like one of the only things that motivates your child. When you're getting this testing done at Children's, I would make sure you bring that up. Because if they're giving you a full battery with a lot of testing, they might be able to come across something. But we do have very addictive personalities. Again, when you look at the levels of success, all these Elon Musks and everyone else who have this thing, part of it's because we have addictive personalities. We dive into something, and it doesn't matter if it's 80, 90 hours a week, we'll just keep going with it, which is scary with some things. But yeah, I'd really talk to Children's while you're going through this. You might be able to uncover some stuff. What?
Find another motivator.
Yeah. Try your best. Try your best. It's all you can do. Yeah. A couple more. Yeah.
Do you coach the students? Like, do you have a private practice? How do we coach the students we need to?
So I have a team of people, and I oversee everything. And yes, we do coach kids. We do it very differently. We do mentorships, and so we call and text kids throughout the week, and we just do it a little bit different because that's the level of support a lot of our students need. And so we do everything from a kid who's struggling just to pass high school, to kids who are trying to get a college football scholarship and need to get their grades up to a certain amount, to kids who are trying to get into Harvard with dyslexia, but that's their goal, so they need to so that's kind of where it is. You'd be surprised with some of our kids when they figure out their brains. You'd be surprised with what they can do. Yes, sir.
We said like 15 minutes for exercise. Do you mean like every 15 minutes or like 15 minutes and then like maybe like how long it takes for them to do that?
That's a super high level question. Thank you for that. So most people's attention lasts about 15 to 20 minutes. So I would say 15 minutes of exercise followed by doing your homework for 15 to 20 minutes, and then maybe short little things like we did in here as well. You don't need to exercise 15 minutes every single time. 15 minutes will just help you be a better you throughout the day. Great question, though. Yeah.
My question kind of goes back to one of the personal stories you told about being in graduate school and zoning out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just curious how you kind of offset that all your zoning out. How did you feel like you could still be successful taking exams and getting to graduate school?
Great question. The answer is teacher office hours. Everyone is going to tell your kids what they're not good at. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I could always talk to my professors. A lot of our population, they're very socially gifted. Everyone tells you what you're not good at. I figured out to double down and triple down at what I was good at. I wore out office hours all the time. So yeah, that's what I did. And going with that, I always studied in groups as well. I had other people hold me accountable for staying on track. I'm not going to zone out if there's 3 or 4 people studying with me.
Hi, super quick question about the football player you showed with the flashcards.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit more about that specific process? Because I think it would be really helpful for my kids.
It's actually not fancy at all. It's all we do is we put flashcards on the ground, and the same way you would quiz your student on like a flashcard before, like that's how we do it. So they get the right, it goes into this pile, get it wrong, it goes into this pile. But after everyone they get right, we throw the football to them. And some of our students are just golden retrievers with more complicated feelings. So they'll do anything for a ball throw.
You mentioned eating, Lisa, one of your things for movement and eating. like that. And my 7-year-old who's like our most ADHD kid, he doesn't stop eating all day long. Thank goodness right now we have a second grade teacher who lets him do that. He has like a special eating corner.
Okay.
Crazy amount of food. And I'm wondering if you can say more about that. You mentioned it there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's just his metabolism or he's just burning so many calories because he's moving so quickly or he's in a growth spurt. Yeah, I know I don't sit still. I don't ever sit down and eat. I'm just constantly munching on things throughout the day as well. So I don't know if I have anything fancy for you there. He's just a growing, hungry, energetic dude, and who's got time to sit down?
Yeah. I was just wondering, what's the youngest age that you work with in your practice?
Elementary school kids generally terrify us. So a lot of the stuff we talk about, it's geared for middle school, high school, and college. We do have some elementary school teachers that work with us and help us do it. It's just a different game. Because if you notice a lot of the routines I was talking about, it's very different for elementary school, and we know that. That being said, keep in touch with us. We may have something. But if you're looking at coaching, I know there's a lot of elementary people in the area, and early intervention is super, super helpful. Like I said, a lot of these things are muscles. You know, learning how to play on yourself and learning how to, I mean, it's a muscle. You're welcome.
Thanks again for all of the great information.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, so children who have been medicated, do you have different outcomes with your program versus kids that are?
I'm stunned that we made it 20 minutes into question and answer without a medication question. So with medication, so just so you know, is that me? Oh, okay. Thank you. So just so you know, we're not anti-medication in any way. What we are anti is that quite often we medicate our kids without giving them these skills, and then it doesn't work, surprisingly, and then we keep medicating them. Just because you can focus for the first time in your life doesn't mean that you know how to organize your week or you know all these things that make you successful. So the answer is no. We don't see different outcomes. For some kids, medication's the right answer. If you've exhausted every resource and you've tried everything you can, medication may be right for you. But you got to pair the things or you're never going to see growth.
Hi. You explained that they have some athletes they work with and they're like golden retrievers because they want to sport and that motivates them to be able to catch the ball and be from the ball. Can you just share other things that you found when working with students that help motivate them?
That's a great question because I forgot the most important one. We use mini trampolines like crazy. Going back to your elementary question, we found that mini trampolines and multiplication facts, we can get kids to like go for like hours on end. They love it. It really helps our kids. So what we'll do is we'll have them try to learn their multiplication facts. They'll jump on the trampoline while we're reciting to them. And if they don't know something, they have to jump off. They have to learn it. And the reward is back on the trampoline. It's a great way to do rote memorization. Again, I don't get too fancy with it. When I was teaching, if I ever wanted to get something out of a child, I would never dare do it face to face. I would never have a conversation with them, especially with a young man. It just wouldn't work. I would shoot hoops with them. I'd go on a walk with them. Again, it does not need to be fancy. It's just some of us are active people. We're movers. But yeah, we really, really like our mini trampolines. Yeah.
Is there a resource that you recommend for, you know, the quick movement, balance, lateral movement? You know, I mean, obviously, like bouncing balls may have to be effective for people, but is there a way to like find ideas like that?
That's a great question. We should probably put something together. We should probably put something together. I'm guessing your occupational therapist has them all. I know a lot of our kids do a lot of shadow boxing type stuff. We love martial arts, like, because a lot of it's like cross lateral type stuff. But yeah, I'll defer to her on that one. Again, it doesn't need to be super fancy. Just something a lot of balance works really well, and a lot of cross lateral movement will do the trick.
If a student is hyper focused, is there a quick way as a teacher to break that focus without explosive anger?
That's a great question. How old?
I'm a first year, third grade teacher.
First year, third grade teacher. Well, you're out of my realm. But I mean, hyperfocus is tough because I'm assuming you have a kid who's like really, really, really deep in it, and you're like constantly trying to like say things and talk to them. Would a tap on the shoulder work? Is that appropriate or no?
It sometimes does, and sometimes there's no
Just nothing?
recognition.
Some of the best teachers that I've seen and that I've worked with, they use a lot of like musical and verbal things. They pair a lot of stuff. Like when I play this song, it's time to start wrapping up. And it gives you time. It gives you time to start like winding down. Because even maybe a minute into the song, they're like, oh. I've seen a lot of teachers have a lot of success with things like that. You're welcome.
So how long does it take to see a difference with these kids that kind of do it? Does it vary by child, or do you see in the first few sessions you have, or does it take a long time for you to start to see that executive function increase, and just them getting a handle on it, confidence, and their anxiety to reduce and that type of thing?
That's a great question. Very, very individualized. Very individualized. What we do see we actually see a huge decrease in anxiety right away, because our kids, once they have a plan, they tend to feel a lot better. Another thing that we do is we judge them against themselves, and that's how we view success versus the class. So for example, we graph their grades every week. So if they have a 2% in math, and they get that up to a 4%, we basically throw a party for them. Well, everyone else is saying, you're still failing math.